Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a young couple married for 5 years faces a crisis when the wife develops sudden insomnia, leading to a series of suspicious behaviors. She comes home late, engrossed in her phone, and takes nighttime walks. The husband's growing doubts prompt him to request to see her phone, unveiling a hidden affair. He discovers numerous calls to another man, confronts her, and exposes the affair. The other man, unaware of her marital status, also breaks ties with her. The husband ends the marriage, gains custody of their 2-year-old daughter, and provides her with stability. While he starts dating someone new, he's committed to ensuring a stable environment for his child, avoiding hasty introductions to new partners. This story explores trust, betrayal, and the importance of a stable family for the child's well-being. Now let's get into the story. My wife 24 and I 26, were married for 5 years without any problems. The problem started with her sudden onset of insomnia. Nothing changed in our life. We still lived in the same home and both still worked the same jobs. She would get home from work a little before me, but instead of coming home to a ready dinner made for the two of us, I came home to her on her phone, laying in bed. She said she already ate and stayed on her phone doing whatever we had. A 2-year-old. At this point, she would usually be playing beside her in the bed, but I started to wonder if my wife was even paying attention to her daughter any more than a babysitter. She started taking walks in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. I woke up and saw she was gone from our bed. So I checked our baby's room, then downstairs, then opened the front door to see if the car was gone. I open it and find her standing there about to come back into the house. She didn't have her keys in her hand and was still wearing her pajamas, so I believed her when she said she couldn't sleep and needed to get some air. Our neighborhood was safe, but I did ask her to try to stay in the house from now on. She didn't. It was several nights in a row that I would stir just as my wife was getting back into bed from God knows where. As I fell asleep each night, she was on her phone. I finally had enough. I asked her to let me see her phone one night just before I fell asleep. She was stunned by my request and said she didn't need to give me her phone. I said if she was a good, loyal wife, there wouldn't be any problem. She was really upset with me now. She said I didn't trust her and she didn't have to stand for this. Before I could stop her, she locked herself in the bathroom with her phone. I thought I heard whispering, but if she did try to call, it was only for a few seconds. Then she came out and threw her phone at me, telling me I could look at it all I wanted because she cleaned off all the evidence. I told her I wasn't the idiot she thought I was, and I knew something was going on. I said if she didn't stop all the odd behavior, I would hire a pie to follow her around. She gasped and said we couldn't afford that. It could be worth the investment. I told her. Not. Even 1 week later, I saw an Amazon charge on our account for 2 manly-type gifts. I think maybe, although doubtful, she bought me apology presents. I waited 2 days and found that the packages were delivered, but my wife hid them away before we went to bed that night. I saw charges from gas stations over the past month that we normally wouldn't drive to. She was definitely going somewhere after work, in the middle of the night, and possibly during the day when I'd assumed she was working. I stayed awake in bed waiting for her to leave like she always did. I didn't think it would be so easy to pretend to be asleep until 2:45 a.m. That's when she very slowly and quietly got out of bed. I watched her from the upstairs window as she got in her car and drove away. I went downstairs to look for any clues she might have left behind. I noticed I forgot to open the phone bill and something told me to for some reason. This time they included a list of outgoing calls from my wife's cell phone, 233 calls in that month alone to a specific phone number. I called it from my cell. A man answered wide awake, asking who this was. I told him my first name and asked if he was expecting a young woman, my wife's name, to arrive at his house in a few moments. He said yes, then asked how I knew that. I told him she was my wife and I was pretending to sleep in bed until she left the house. He was speechless. He said the woman he was seeing wasn't married. Just as he said this, I saw my wife's wedding rings by the kitchen. I told him if she brought him the 2 items I saw on the Amazon order, she was my wife and he was her AP. He said if it was true, he would dump her at the same time as me. He said he was getting too old to be playing games and thought she was a serious, respectable woman. I said if she's guilty of right, then she is. She's not who we thought. My wife arrived there while he was on the phone with me. He just sat down the phone. I could hear her greet him like he was her lover. Then I heard her say she had 2 surprises for him. He gasped in a scared way when he saw the items were the same ones I mentioned. He wasted no time and told her he had her husband on the phone right now. He handed her the phone and I said, "Hey, honey, we're over." She squeaked and started crying against her will. She tried to say there was a misunderstanding, but we both waited with me on speaker for her to give an explanation, and she didn't know what to say. She tried saying she was planning to divorce me, which is why she started seeing this guy. I asked her if she told her AP about our 2-year-old daughter, and she did not. He said he had no idea she was married with a new child. He apologized to me, then broke up with her and kicked her out. She was screaming and crying, really freaking out. I couldn't understand what was happening, but the call was eventually dropped. Since she had a key, I moved the couch and other furniture in front of the doors to stop her from getting in. She tried to call me 13 times while I slept like a baby next to our 2-year-old. I knew I figured out what was going on, and it gave me so much peace, I was able to rest. Well, the next morning, the police showed up. They told me my wife spent the night in the car because she couldn't get in, even though she lived here. I got the lease, which was in my name. I told them what was going on, and they told her they couldn't force me to let her in because the place was in my name. She insulted them, asking them what their job was if not to help people, was surprised she took it out on them so much. She freaked out about her daughter being inside, and the cops refused to get involved with that as well. She went to her mom's house 2 hours away. They started figuring out what, if anything, they could do in her defense. Apparently the evidence I had against her was more than enough to get better favor in the divorce and primary custody of our daughter. My ex had several boyfriends in quick succession, and it just made me extremely thankful that my daughter had a stable home environment with me. She started preschool and is doing great. She still sees her mom. I started dating someone but haven't introduced them to my daughter. I'm determined to be her stable, a father figure without other women coming in and out of our lives. Here are my thoughts on the situation. I'm truly sorry to hear about the difficult situation with your wife's decisions. It's clear that her actions have caused you a lot of pain, especially because she started communicating with another man without discussing it with you first. It must have been tough to notice those changes in her behavior. You handled the situation with patience and tried to maintain open communication, even when she wasn't reciprocating. It seems like she may have struggled to understand how to avoid temptation and uphold the commitment to your marriage. Remember, it's essential to continue honoring the person you've chosen to spend your romantic life with. People change over time, and that includes both you and your spouse. What should never change, though, is the importance of open and honest communication and love in your relationship. Both of these are choices that require effort from both partners. Try not to judge or condemn your spouse too harshly, as we all have our moments of imperfection, and you might also find yourself in a similar situation someday. Today's second story. In this story, OP discovers that his wife cheated on him with a coworker. The protagonist's world shatters when he receives explicit photos of his wife with the other man. Despite their seemingly perfect marriage, the wife admits to the affair, claiming it was a mistake and that she loves her husband. She explains that her friend advised her to have an affair to maintain attraction to her spouse, which led to her infidelity. The husband is torn between his love for his wife and the betrayal he feels. He kicks her out but is constantly bombarded with pleas for a second chance. The story ends with the husband grappling with whether to forgive and reconcile or let go of the relationship entirely. Now let's get into the story. My wife cheated on me with a coworker and now the guy is obsessed with my wife. Right now I'm feeling totally crushed. I can't eat, talk, or do anything. I gave her my everything and sacrificed so much for her, yet she betrayed me. I don't know what to do. Never in my life did I imagine that she could hurt me this badly. She used to be a perfect, loving, and caring wife that everyone loved. She is very religious and used to pray to God daily and do rituals married women do to wish their husbands long life by practice of Hinduism. She is perfect in every way and always shows me affection and tells me how much she loves me. There are many things that happen, but I will try to not make it too long. We have been best friends since childhood. We went to the same school and even had jobs in the same fields. I've had a crush on her since we were kids. She was in 2 serious relationships before me and always ended up getting used. She used to despise cheaters. After some years we started dating. I cried a lot that day because it was like a dream that I wanted to see all my life. After 4 years of dating, we got married. Both our families didn't agree at first because in India families fear love marriages due to them thinking they always fail. It took us a year to convince them. For the first 2 years, our marriage was perfect. Then she started acting strange. She would do the usual of saying I love you, doing chores, random kissing, etc. But something felt different. I had known her entire life and could tell something wasn't right. She seemed to be working way too much lately. One day when we were getting ready to go to work, I saw a message that popped up on her phone and said please reply, I won't ask again. Why are you just ignoring like that? It appeared to be from some male coworker of hers that I had never seen before. I initially thought it may be work-related, but then I remembered my wife telling me that many employees were leaving the company because of conflicts and salary issues, and during that time she had mentioned his name. Moments later she sat and looked at her phone. Then she looked at me wondering if I had read the message. She then had a very suspicious look on her face. I tried to not think too much of it, so I let it go. Then the very next day when she was using her phone, she started crying. When I asked what was wrong, she said she was very frustrated about work and was under a lot of pressure. I let her rest her head on my shoulder as she cried. She was a strong woman who always took a stand, so at the time I didn't understand what could cause her to be down like that. She continued this pattern for a week, and whenever I asked her what was going on, she wouldn't give me a proper answer. I did everything I could to be a good husband to her during that time. Here are where things took a turn after that week had passed. I got a message from an unknown number that showed me pics of my wife in bed with some guy cuddling while she was asleep naked, and the guy's face was not visible in the pics. After seeing this, my heart stopped for a moment. I couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing at that time. Seeing those pics made me wonder if she was being blackmailed, and that was why she was acting weird. The cheating didn't cross my mind until later. One day when I got home from work, I went up to her and told her that we needed to talk. She started crying after I said this. She knew what I was going to talk about before I even said anything. She immediately started apologizing and said she never meant it to go this far. She then told me she loved me very much and begged me for forgiveness. That's when my world came crashing down. Not a single word came out of my mouth. It felt like I literally went blank. I left and didn't say a word after. I took some time to be by myself, then came home around 4 in the morning after accepting it was a reality, not a dream. She was still crying on the couch. She tried to hug me saying I love you nonstop. I pushed her away, then asked her how could she do this when our marriage was seemingly perfect. She had crushed everything we had built together for years. I told her that I did everything I could for her as a husband. I gave up my dream job just so I could work in my home city to live with her. The house we were living in was fully paid for by me. She didn't say a word and just continued sobbing. Then I asked her for an explanation for how it started and why she did it. She claimed it was just a one-time mistake that happened. She said she would be willing to leave her job and make it up to me. She claimed she would no longer see him again. She looked guilty and remorseful, but I knew she wasn't being totally honest, as it was not one time as she mentioned, because there were 2 pics of different places. From the text messages I got. She didn't know I saw the pics, and when I showed her, her face then turned pale and she claimed he forced her the second time. At that time, the trust one had for her was completely dismantled and I could no longer believe anything she said. I asked her if she loved him or if she wanted to leave me, to which she responded no. After talking to her calmly for like 2 hours, I told her that if she didn't tell me the full story of what happened, I would leave right then. And never come home again. That's when she finally started telling me from the very start. She said it started when she mentioned our bed problems to one of her friends. Her friend then told my wife how she loves her husband but occasionally cheats on him so that she won't lose attraction to her husband, and said that my wife should try this to get attracted to me again. This logic made absolutely no sense to me. She said she didn't want to do it, but that the guy she cheated with started flirting with her for some days and she started flirting back, and then they hooked up after some days. But after doing so she claimed she felt guilty. She said she made a horrible mistake but that she only loves me after it happened. The first time she tried to cut off contact with the guy, but he insisted to do it just one more time. She refused constantly, but when he told her about the pics she became scared. So she did it a second time to end it and told him to never contact her again. That guy took pics of her without her knowing. Both times after that he left the company. She says she wanted to come clean to me, but she was so afraid because if it came out to my family or her family they would make her life a living hell. In our country, people have no mercy for cheating women. If it came out, both of our family and friends would disown her. She told me she hoped it was finally over, but after some days he again messaged her. But this time he didn't ask for sex. He instead said things like, "I love you, I know you love me too, and we are perfect." The guy was moving to a different state for his job and wanted my wife to run with him and leave me. I think she was saying the truth this time due to the fact that she had been acting weird since last week. I believe her story is true because everything adds up correctly and their chats also prove it. But still, their chats were only recent ones, and I don't know exactly if they only did this twice or if it happened more. After that, I felt bad about it, then hugged her. But then I started getting images of them together, and that's when I lost my cool finally and let my anger out. After that, I kicked her out and she stayed at her parents' house without saying anything. Since that day she has called me constantly and messaged me non-stop saying, "I just want one chance, I promise I will never do it again. I can't live without you," and everything, which is making me want to give her a second chance. But every time I think of taking her back, I get images of my wife with that guy, which makes my blood boil. Our families were so worried because we had never fought before. They kept asking me what happened, but I will never tell anyone because if I tell anyone, she will be dead to everyone. This morning I finally talked to her for an hour about the whole thing. She is truly remorseful and will do anything to be with me and to gain my trust. We talked about all our issues and what to do to that bastard. She said he stopped texting her after leaving the city, but she is terrified as he still has those pics. I hate her now but also love her, and I don't know how it's possible. I want to ask if I should give her a chance. What do you guys think? Here are my thoughts on the situation. OP, giving your wife another chance after cheating is a difficult decision. Her actions raise concerns about her judgment and self-control. Rebuilding trust will be challenging. Whether or not to inform her family depends on your unique circumstances. Moving forward requires careful consideration of your feelings and her commitment to change.